Hello and welcome. Last week I played the 38th edition of my home concert series, and today I want to talk about how I created the third track of this live set. So let's listen to it first so that you know what I'm talking about. This is how my Ableton arrangement looked like during this live set. I'm doing everything here in session mode, and the arrangement mode is completely empty, as you can see here. And all these clips are corresponding to the 4 tracks that I prepared. So the first track is here in the top row, the second one in the second row, and so on. And I also use different colors to make it easier for me to see everything. I can navigate with the push console here and can select which tracks I want to play. I can also change all the levels, and sometimes I also change some settings in the effects. I can also start and stop the clips, and I can also enable the recording of a new clip. Most of these clips that I have here are empty. They are more reminders to myself which kind of sounds I want to load. So let's take a look at this first one here. It says 6445 on the Iridium desktop channel. So this means that on the Iridium I have to select the corresponding patch. I could do this with a MIDI program change, but I decided to do this on my own because, like I said, the clips are empty and I don't want to have constant program changes that are running while I'm playing. But technically, of course, it would be possible to automate this with program changes over MIDI. So now I need to click on this performance button here and go to my favorites, and then I have the patch that I want to start with right here on my set list. And this first patch that I play in this track sounds like this. This is a very beautiful patch by a Luftroom soundset, and it uses 2 different sample layers and also 1 layer of the waveform engine. And what did I play? I played basically an F minor chord, but I also added a third, in this case the B flat. And over this chord I played a C minor chord. So it's C minor over F minor with an added third. So in the live situation, when I want to start with this new song, I hit delete. At first I have to check my record modes because these kinds of pads should not be quantized, so I make sure that my record quantization is off. And I also need to make sure that the fixed length is off, because sometimes I'm using this fixed length in order to automatically have the right loop points. So imagine this stuff is already running, and then I simply hit record here, and then you will see how this clip goes into record mode. And then I can start playing this patch. I always leave some empty space at the end of each clip because there will be much more pads layered and more sounds added to this one, so I don't want to have everything constantly playing, because in the end it will be very chaotic and yeah, like this. So after a while I press this button again, and then you see that everything that I just recorded is repeating over MIDI. Let's head over to the next sound. I prepared a drone sound from Omnisphere. It is also a sound from a Luftroom library called Ambient Soundscapes, and I was just playing 2 notes here, so I pre-record this so that I could just launch the clip. It adds a very nice drone in the lower frequencies to this whole thing. The next sound in this live set was from the Iridium keys, and you can see that it has the number 5112. So I need to go here on my performance page and select the right patch from my set list. And it's a very basic patch with 2 wavetables going on, and I set them to a mode where the individual waveforms of this wavetable are not interpolated. So usually with this smooth mode, it would sound like this. So you have a very smooth transition while the wavetable changes the waveforms. But if you go to this stepped mode, the whole number of waveforms inside this wavetable is reduced. So it's, I think, very easy to understand if you see how this behaves. If you change, if you walk through this wavetable, you only have 8 different steps. Usually with the smooth mode, you would have a very smooth transition through the wavetables. But with the step mode, it can be interesting, because then you get this kind of the sound that I just played. So now in the live situation, when everything is playing, I first delete this clip again and hit record and start to play some stuff. The next sound in this track is very simple. It is the init preset from the DX7 from Arturia, and I think also the first sound on the actual real DX7 that I have, by the way, but not hooked up to anything, so I was using this virtual version here. Very nice piano, and of course it sounds nice because I have this very big reverb from Valhalla DSP. And in the context of the rest of the track, it sounds like that. The next sound is showing a very interesting feature of the Iridium keys. And let me first play this one for you so that you know what I'm talking about. The interesting thing about this sound is that it uses polyphonic aftertouch. This means you can play any amount of notes at the same time, and by pressing the key a bit harder, you can apply any modulation that you would like to have on this specific sound. So watch again how I play like 8 different notes on the keyboard, and by pressing some of the keys a bit harder, this specific note will have a higher frequency, in this case of the cutoff filter. And this is polyphonic aftertouch. And maybe you wonder where this sound actually is coming from, and this is the Waldorf M. The Waldorf M is connected to Ableton over MIDI, like all my other synthesizers in this Liveset. And I selected a patch called Lightpad. And I found out that when I increase the value of the filter, of the cutoff filter, that it has a very nice sound that I like. I will just demonstrate this by moving the correspondent knob here. And so, in order to have this accessible with the aftertouch of the polyphonic aftertouch, I went into the mod matrix of the Waldorf M, and as you can see in the mod matrix, you can select different sources for modulation. Of course, it can be LFOs, it can be envelopes, it can be anything. And there's one point in this matrix that is called polyphonic aftertouch. So with this polyphonic aftertouch, the synthesizer listens to the polyphonic aftertouch signals that come in over MIDI. So these two, the Iridium keys and the Waldorf M, can communicate with each other, and it's possible to use this polyphonic aftertouch feature that both the Waldorf M supports and the Iridium supports without any hassle. I believed at first that it would be necessary to enable MPE or something, but it's not the case here. The polyphonic aftertouch is already implemented in Neptune. Ja, Neptune, geh doch mal vielleicht runter. Guck mal. So, where was I? Polyphonic aftertouch is part of the original MIDI implementation. So you don't need to do any fancy stuff. You can just hook it up with MIDI, with any DAW, Ableton, Bitwig, Logic, Cubase, whatever, and it should work out of the box. During the Liveset, I was switching between those two sounds for quite a while. So I played some phrases with the Waldorf M. And then switch back to the Rhodes. And back to the M. One more thing about the polyphonic aftertouch of the Waldorf Iridium keys. You can use this with any hardware or software that listens to polypressure. So let me illustrate this by creating a new MIDI track and load the wavetable synthesizer from Ableton to this track. And let's load the first wavetable here. So if you move this position, to get a different sound, obviously. And now in the matrix, it's possible, so this parameter is called oscillator 1 position, to route this to pressure. Oscillator 1 listens to pressure. So by applying the aftertouch to any of the keys, I can move this wavetable. And you see it's also polyphonic. So much for all the pads and atmospheric sounds of this track. On the right, I prepared sequences that are played from the Microfreak, the Matriarch, and the Modular system. Let's start with the first one. It's from the Microfreak and sounds like this. Without the delay and reverb, it sounds like that. It's a very basic patch that is using one of the new oscillator modes from Teenage Engineering that were coming with one of the recent updates. The next sequence is from the Moog Matriarch and sounds like this. This patch is also very simple. I have a high oscillator. The second oscillator is one octave below the first one. And there is a little envelope modulation on the filter frequency, because we have two envelopes on the Moog Matriarch, and the first one is tied to the filter and the second one to the volume, the VCA. So without the envelope automation, it would sound like this. And this envelope is very short attack, short decay, low sustain. So you have this plucky sound coming out. And as a last thing, I added some LFO modulation to the filter so that I don't have to constantly move the knob on my own. The third sequencer sound is from the Modular system and sounds like this. Without the effects and with delay and reverb. It's basically a complete waste of money to do a sound like this with a Modular system. The sound is sent to Mutable Instruments yarns through MIDI, and from there it triggers Make Noise Maths, where I have two envelopes generated, and one of them is sent to Ripples as filter, and the other one to the Veils VCA, and the actual sound is coming from the Plates module, and it's also a very basic sound with just two waveforms. So it's basically the same patch as I have on the Moog Matriarch, but with different modules. And during the set I play a bit with some values of the Modular system to make this more interesting over time. So let's bring in all the other elements one by one. So this was it for tonight. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little walkthrough. Stay safe, stay creative, make music, and be happy, and see you next time.